Good evening. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Tricia. My sobriety date is September 7th, 2014. I have a sponsor, Kate, who has a sponsor. Her name is evading me at the moment, but she has a sponsor too. And I guess happy Halloween. I'm going to have a little couple of stories that I'll share with you about myself and Halloween. But first, I'll tell you about my first experience with alcohol. I was probably around the age that I've been in Greensboro in North Carolina. So within the 9 months that I was in my mother's womb was the first time I experienced alcoholism. My father drank, and it was really quite a difficult experience, not just for my mother, but for me within her womb. There was a lot of noises that I heard even through being inside of her. There's a lot of pain that I felt that she was inflicted on, whether it was emotional or physical. There was always screaming, there was always yelling, there were things being thrown around. And, my mom's favorite time was to actually be in the bathroom, because it's the only place in this New York City apartment where she could close the door and Dad would be on the other side. So, she would clean, and she didn't wear gloves. So I'm sure that coming through that barrier, my favorite smell, and the only time I'm really calm is when I could smell Mr. Clean, pine sol. Like, that's my favorite smell, and it relaxes me. So it's a little strange. When I actually was born and out of Mom's tummy, it wasn't any different. Screaming, yelling, shouting. There was probably a little bit more even scarier, because there'd be times when my dad would be drinking after a party, and she would stand in front of the car and say, "No, you're not going to drive," and he'd push her out of the way. There are times when she would just open the door and jump out of the moving car. And it was scary to be in the car when Dad was driving, because I had no control. I could actually see from the back seat of the car for many, many years the swerving, and sometimes we'd actually almost flip over. And every time he said he was fine to drink. So that was how my early years were actually, experienced. I will say, though, that there is such a flip side to that, because my father was the life of the party. Like, he told the best dirty jokes, and everybody wanted to hear them all the time. We would be at parties, and he'd be dancing in the middle of the floor with Mom, and then a second later, she's like, "Where's my dance partner?" And he's there dancing with the girl with the higher heels and the prettier top and the, bigger smile, and Mom was left alone. And as I got older, I think, if I wanted to be either one of those two adults showing me what life is about, who would I rather be? I want to be the fun guy. I want to be the guy that everybody loves, right? Even back at home, my dad would just lay in bed and call people on the phone. And we had those old phones back then where you'd have to use the dial. And then it was cool when he had the buttons and they'd glow. But he'd still call people and just be the joke teller from home. He drank from home too. So it's only natural that my first drink would be at home. I think I was 10 years old. I had the flu, and I was bothering the heck out of my dad and my family. So my dad's like, "Come here," and he gave me a glass of scotch that was probably half filled, and he said, "Drink this," because it would quiet me. And I remember what that felt like at 10, to take that drink and to feel it go down my throat, the burn that it felt, and all of a sudden I was quiet. I didn't say a thing, but my mind was racing with thoughts, constantly. I couldn't shut it up. So I would lay in bed quiet, but I would just, lay awake for a really long time. That might have happened a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times, but still, it was a memory that I still remember. So I'll interject a Halloween story. I remember also being around 10 or 12 when I won the Chase Manhattan Bank Halloween contest. And I think about it now, and it seems really strange. I was telling someone the other day, I was dressed up in my ballet leotards with a cottontail pinned onto my back, my dad or mom's socks stuffed into mom's bra, and I was a Playboy bunny with a tray, and I was walking around with fake drinks. And I won first place for this contest. So these are like, I'm a child of the 70s, 80s. So that was very confusing for me. So, when I think about, I don't know which one I'd still want to be, but Mom was the creative one, and that's how I spent that Halloween. But when I think about how, my drinking progressed, it was really because I was a quiet person in grade school and high school. I was the one that would come into the cafeteria and be like, where am I going to sit? Because no one's going to even notice me. It doesn't matter where I sit. But it was towards the end of high school that I had my first voluntary drink. And the kids in the neighborhood had invited me to go under the deck of the house where they had stolen 2 6-packs for maybe like 6 or 7 of us. So almost everybody had their own warm, disgusting can of beer. And I remember what that felt like when I drank it down. I was like, it doesn't matter that these people are people I don't know. They're instantly my friends. And I fit in here in a way that I never fit in before, right? All of a sudden, I was one of them. I'm a kind of a late bloomer. That was my early experience with alcohol. But when I went away to college, I went 30 minutes away from Mom and Dad's home. That first week was every single night as many drinks as I could, handle. Sometimes that was 7, sometimes that was 9, sometimes that was 13. And I went to a college where it was all women in the dorm that I was in. I was sneaking boys in through the window after the 7th drink, after the 11th drink, I remember pushing their tushes and boots into the window to get them into our dorm. And the very first time, though, that I drank that week, I was in the elevator. The dorm was only 2 floors. I was in the elevator, and I was having a party. I was having such a great time. People were laughing, and all of a sudden, I was hysterical crying, and I didn't know why. And I pushed that stop button in the elevator, trapping the 4 people that were in that elevator with me. And I think they were really scared, and at the same time, we were just having such a great time. What's going on? That was my college experience. I drank as much as I could so that I could be that life of the party, so that I could fit in. But I had to try and catch up, and so every single night, I was the last person sitting in the hallway so I wouldn't disturb my roommate, and I would be studying. I don't know how much studying I could have done that drunk or that hungover, but I tried, and I actually somehow managed to get through the first 2 years of college. My one characteristic or big story that happened, which probably should have been my bottom, is I went upstate with my friend to Syracuse, New York, and I was up there for a big party. I saw kids from high school that were like, you were not cool, but you're cool now. And we were drinking together. And I don't even know how I was standing, but this one high school classmate of mine said, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to school for communications, I'm not sure yet. And he's like, well, I'm going to actually be the president of the United States. And he said, and I'm going to do that because I'm taking poli-sci right now. And I said, well, the president of the Philippines went to my college, so I'm going to be president of the United States. He's like, heck no, you can't be, you're a girl. So I actually said we would stage a campaign in this bar, and I went around campaigning to everybody in the bar, and I actually don't remember if I won or if I lost, but I remember standing on the bar giving my acceptance speech. And that was where these guys from high school ended up sneaking me into their dorm. And it wasn't because they wanted to, date me or get with me. They were like, you were so messy that we were so afraid for you. And you're up in Syracuse where lots of scary things can happen. So they snuck me into their dorm and locked me in the dorm room until my friend, came to get me. And when I got back that next day, my friend's mother said to her, I really think your friend has a problem, and you've got to bring her right away when you get back to school, to the school nurse, to the psychiatrist, something. And I actually did go. It was that summer that I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so from that one semester that I took off of school to kind of get right in my head and get all my doctors straight, all the doctors said, you know what, Tricia, you'll be fine as long as you only drink 2 drinks. Just drink 2 drinks, nothing more. And I think that's hysterical, right? Because we know in AA now, it's just the first drink that gets you drunk. But I'll tell you, that lesson took me almost another 28 to 30 years to learn. And so I only drank 2 drinks, and then I got my really famous job in public relations, doing public relations for a major makeup company. So I had celebrities that I was working with, and it was at that same job that they told me that I had to go to drinking school. They said, there's no way you're going to go to these big dinners with presidents of from different countries and not know your difference between Scotch whiskey and cognac. So you have to go. So I went to a school, and I actually took this drinking class, and I failed. So I had to take it twice. And that was the kind of industry that I, wanted to be in, because that was what I saw when I was growing up that was exciting. I lasted in that career for 3 years. And then, I think that there's another Halloween story in there. There's another time where I can think about probably drinking the most I have ever drank in my life, and it's in the New York City Halloween parade. There's a parade there where there's thousands and thousands of people wearing costumes. And all I know is it ended with me taking big risks with my own health that I've never done before. And I'd always wanted the approval of, men, people from the opposite sex. And that night I actually drank so much that I made some really crazy decisions. And every time Halloween comes around, I think about that. And I just think about how lucky I am that I'm still alive. But, I think that there are lots of things that happen. There were car accidents. I actually crashed my very first car. It wasn't until I was in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for about a year that I realized I did not fall asleep behind the wheel those 2 or 3 times, that I blacked out. That's what a blackout is, when I actually just don't remember how things happened. And so, there were some other things that had happened. Well, probably that I got married. I got married around 2 days ago would have been my 20th wedding anniversary, and I'm divorced now. But I actually married the wrong guy because I wanted to please my parents. I think that this alcoholic has such a people-pleasing gene that I just want to make everybody so happy. So I married the guy that my mom and dad would have married me to. And nice guy, but like my brother. And I could actually only have one husband, but lots of brother-like people in my life. So I stuck it out for about 15, 16 years. And one of the reasons why is because he didn't drink. So I drank less. So people do a geographic. I did, a marriage where I thought that it would actually keep me from drinking. And I can think of maybe 2 times that my ex-husband and I drank. And one was in the very beginning, which helped me kind of think that he was the right guy for me. And one was probably towards the end. But I ended up going to a therapist who was going to help decide if this marriage was a good thing or a bad thing for me. And I went to our 3rd session with 3 drinks in me. I had met a friend from grad school right before seeing her. So I came in there and I'm like, hey, in vino veritas, right? This is where I tell you the truth because I've had a few drinks. And she said, absolutely not. And she said, I will not work with you again. And you have no idea how much you triggered me. And she said that I actually almost caused her to have, trauma situation. And she didn't tell me why. She didn't tell me which 12-step program she was in. But she did say that she would not continue to see me. And it was then that she told me she called ahead to a rehab in Arizona, and it was just up to me to go. And I told her, you know what, I actually do everything the hard way. So how can I do this the hard way instead of just going to Arizona? And she told me, make 90 meetings in 90 days. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days and let me know how that works for you. I think after the 6th meeting, I actually decided that I would go ahead and call Arizona and get checked in, and that's what I did. I ended up going there. But that wasn't my first meeting in AA that time. I had gone shortly after I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I had to find a way not to drink, and I thought that going to AA was it. Funny thing is, it was my 6th meeting. They used to say, go to 6 meetings and see if this is for you. I showed up at my 6th meeting, and there was nobody there to run the meeting. So the only other girl who showed up for that meeting and I went out to drink. And it was 18 years later until I came back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at 42. So it's today when I look back and see how important it is for people to honor their commitments and to take commitments and to be there for other alcoholics. I think about that. I'm not blaming anything. That's just the way that it was, that my story goes and that it turned out. But I chose to keep going out and having fun that way. When I was in rehab in Arizona, I think that was the very first time that I looked at my relationship with God differently. So I'm going to go back for a second. I don't think it has anything to do with Halloween, but I was 17 when I decided that I was going to become a nun because my friend was doing it. She was 17. Like I said, I'm a people pleaser. I thought I could please God by becoming a nun and taking a vow of chastity, charity, and poverty. I lived in a home in Manhattan, New York that was filled with they're called numeraries. It was a sect of the Catholic Church called Opus Dei. So I would have actually taken a vow at 17 like my friend. And you've heard the rest of my story in between. I would have been the worst nun. But my relationship with a higher power and with God from that point on, 17 as you heard, just became so muddy and so dirty and just not even a real relationship. And then the person that I decided to marry didn't have a religious affiliation, so I didn't have to have a religious affiliation. That was 16 years. So when I'm in Arizona, the one thing that I remember really striking me is looking up at the sky and seeing the stars. Like I've never seen them in New York City before. And I remember saying, wait, I didn't put that there. I didn't make that. So there's got to be a higher power. There's got to be a God, and that's who actually created this beautiful sky for me to look at. And that was the beginning of my relationship with a higher power. So I was in rehab for 6 weeks. I was the first patient who went there for 6 weeks. It started from a 5-week program to 6 weeks. And I remember being coached by the counselor, and he said, so what are you going to do when you get back to New York tomorrow? And I said, I'm actually going to dust because New York City is so dusty. And then he's like, no. I said, I'm actually going to go grocery shopping to the grocery across the street and I'm going to cook something. He's like, no. I just kept going on and on. It probably took like 10, 15 minutes. And he said, no, you're going to ask your estranged husband who's picking you up from the hospital to drop you off at your apartment, drop off your bags, and go directly to a meeting. And we're going to find the meeting right now. And so picked a 10 o'clock meeting in New York that's called The Bridge because it was underneath the bridge. And I went to that meeting. And shortly after that, I found a home group, which was an all-women's group, which was the best idea for me at that time because being right out of rehab and just being, the kind of child I told you in the upbringing I just had like so much stimulation from especially people of the opposite sex. Anybody who gave me attention just was something that I was really hungry with. So I went to women's only meetings for a year, and that was probably like the best thing that I could have done. And it was then that my relationship with others slowly began to build. And I remember my first sponsor telling me she was not someone I would have picked. Back at that home group in the women's group, what they did was they took a list of people who needed a sponsor and a list of people who wanted a sponsor, and they matched you. With no real criteria, they just matched you. And so I was looking at this beautiful young musician, and she was half my age, and I was like, there's no way she's going to be being able to sponsor me. And Kate, the sponsor I told you about earlier, has taken me through the steps almost four and a half times now. in over 5 years. So she's been a tremendous sponsor. But she told me that the way it worked with higher power is that I have power, Tricia has power, Kate has power, and together, when we're doing this work, we have a greater power than we would have had on our own. And that's all I needed for a higher power in the beginning. And, you know, I actually explored a lot of different things. I went back to the church that I was raised in as a child. I started doing service, but that didn't fill me. And then I actually started going to other meetings in New York City, meaning co-ed meetings. And it was there that I really started to get into the service of AA. I made sure that in my home group I did service by chairing the meeting. Like I think I was not even 9 months, and they put me right to work. So the way they do it is I chair the meeting for a 3-month period. I did that. I actually became a treasurer for my home group that I selected after that one. And I started going to meetings all over New York. I'd go to meetings when I'd go to visit family. We did a road trip, so from Virginia all the way through, we stopped at meetings. And now my relationship with my higher power, God, is completely and totally different. I moved here to Greensboro, North Carolina. I came to my interview with the job that I'm at, and it was 13 inches of snow that day. Do you remember that? It was just like about less than a year ago. We had 13 inches, and there was nobody around. But for some reason, after going to my first meeting in town, I went to, what is it called? I think it's called Happy Hour. It was a 5 p.m. meeting. There were a whole bunch of people in the room, and I remember them saying to me as soon as I walked in, they were like, "Ma'am, we're going to help you take your car out and get it out when you leave later." And I said, "Why?" And they were like, "'Cause you're stuck." And I was like, "I'm not stuck. I just stopped where I couldn't go anymore." And so I actually, after the meeting, started the car, tried to go, and sure enough, I was stuck. But it was this group of men from the meeting that helped me push the car up the hill. And I was like, this is actually where I'm going to be. These are my people. These are the people that made me feel at home, away from home. And really, that's what I feel like about AA. You know, every single meeting that I go to, everybody that I meet, I can actually see it in our eyes that we're working this program, we're trudging this road to happy destiny together. And it's actually a beautiful thing. In the work that I do right now, there are some people who come up to me and say, you know, "I remember you from when I was still active, and you talked to me that day." And they still see me in meetings now. And it's a really great way to see that the lights that I saw in the sky here, right here in North Carolina, in the eyes of others that are working this program also. And I can't believe that I've talked so quickly, but I'm going to keep telling you things. So my sponsor now in North Carolina, because you can't just have a sponsor, I think, on the phone. You have to be able to see. Your sponsor has to be able to see you, and I think to be able to see you in meetings is how I feel. And so my sponsor asked me to go to hear her sponsor in a meeting somewhere far out also in North Carolina. And his story was amazing. I want to share it with you. His first thing that he opened up with was that he had gone traveling in the work that he does and happened upon a hot air balloon field. And there was a festival where these balloons were going off. He talked about how it takes so many people to just get one air balloon to actually have liftoff. And he was thinking to himself how similar that is to being in the rooms of AA. That when we actually see someone with just one day, or maybe even 1 month, when they have that liftoff, and you see all the other balloons around, but it really doesn't matter. We celebrate that one balloon that's actually lifting up and how similar that is to us. And I think about my friend here, Connie, who's actually just celebrated 6 months. And to see that lift off is so beautiful, and to just be able to stand by it is also, it helps my sobriety. So every single time I hear someone's story, I take something from it, and I know we're supposed to identify, not compare. So I do. I actually identify with lots of the stories that I hear. My life today has changed completely. I think I can say that I work to really eradicate the ego that I came in with, which is what we all, I think, do here when we work the 12 steps. So one of the things that I do is I actually work with a sponsee, which probably many of you do. She called me on my way up here today, and it's really humbling and really, heartwarming to remember when I had gone through similar situations, and what a blessing it is to be able to help somebody walk through their day-to-day so that they don't pick up another glass of whatever or another bottle of whatever. And to be able to share that with someone else is really important. So one of the meetings that I had gone to when I first started to go to co-ed meetings was chaired by this gentleman, and he asked me the moment that I came into the room, like, how much time do you have? And I was like, oh, this is one of those 13-step things that people tell you about, right? You got to watch out. And he said to me, no, I just want to know if you can speak tonight, because we have like a commitment requirement of how much time you have. So see how early on in my recovery it was all about me. It's all about Tricia. And now it's not like that. So about 3 years ago, that gentleman became my partner. And so now it's really important to me that I have a relationship where we go to assemblies together, we go to meetings together. He was actually at the convention where I had the pleasure of meeting I'm forgetting now your name. See, it's Wallace. But so, thank you. But so, at that convention, he was there too. I think maybe he slept in, but it was a great meeting, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity to meet Wallace there. And I think one of the things that my partner tells me all the time is they say get a newcomer in your life. He believes that you need to get an old timer in your life. And so one of our dearest friends in the program has close to the time that Wallace has, and her sponsor, I think, is close to celebrating her 65th year in AA. And so I think we need each other. That's what's clear to me. And I don't know, I think that I'm going to leave you with some time to speak. But I don't think that I'd have the life that I live today were it not for Alcoholics Anonymous. I see it even in the work that I do. When I'm working with others, I can actually bring what I've learned in the program in my day-to-day dealings with other people, and it's really special. I'd love to say that the story that I first told you in the beginning had a different turnout, but my father today is actually in a wheelchair from his drinking, and was actually just about 5 years ago when I started my journey in sobriety. He had gone out to Japan and was drinking and partying there and fell, and he hit his head, and so now he's actually in a wheelchair. And I remember my family rushing out to go out there, and my mom said to me at that time, you can't go, because if you relapse and you don't have your support and your recovery around you, we're going to end up having to take care of you and your father, and we can't have that. So stay where you are and just concentrate on you. And actually that's love, and that's really smart. So I did that, and just this week I had both my parents in a situation where my mother was in the hospital from caring for my father, because it can be stressful. And just to be able to see how, I think there's so many gifts of sobriety. Within a day of calling all these people to see who could take care of Dad so that Mom could take care of herself and get better. We actually had someone say, we know someone who's a caregiver who's looking for work. And so for 2 days now, they've had help at home. And I don't think that those things just happen. I can actually see where they come from now. And it's helped me to actually stay sober one day at a time, to realize where that's coming from. I think that might be all that I have to share with you. Thank you so much for